Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Hamza Idris. Nigeria's political atmosphere on Thursday witnessed monumental developments that have far-reaching impacts on governance, accountability, and many others, including attempt by the legislature to actually assuage the anger of many Nigerians. And the special advisor to the president, for instance, has spoken and issued a statement on salary increase for civil servants in the country. But then again, of course, the Labour, they have also accepted to agree to the terms. Many citizens believe that the issue, especially by the legislators, to shed up 50% of their salary is not enough, believing that 60% or 50% of their salary is just something very minute compared to the humongous allowances they take every day. And we have two gentlemen joining us. The first one is, of course, Salaudeen Hashim, who is going to join us via Zoom. And in the studio, we have Armsfree Ajanuka, who is the lead fact-checking and countering disinformation consultant with the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. He just came back from the second Africa Conference on Countering Disinformation. Mr. Armstrong, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. My privilege to be here.
All right. Hello. We hope we also have Salaudeen Hashim on the line. Hello. All right. Salaudeen will join us in a while. Yeah. But before we commence the conversation, here are some tidbits. President Bola Tinubu has approved 70,000 as the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers, with a promise to review the national minimum wage law every 3 years. This is coming after the leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress met with the president at the Presidential Villa Abuja on Thursday. The special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bayo Onanuga, in a statement on X, formerly Twitter, confirmed the development. But on their part, the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, also today gave reasons why the organized labor accepted the proposal of 70,000 minimum wage from the government. Ajero, who spoke to State House correspondents after meeting with the president, said the unions agreed to the offer because of other incentives attached by the federal government. He also said another reason for accepting the offer is because President Tinubu promised a review every 3 years, as against what obtains before. The minimum wage, when approved by the National Assembly, will replace the 30,000 minimum wage, which expired on April 2024. And we will now take a short break. When we return, the conversation commences. Don't go away. Welcome back. Yes, we have Armsfree Ajanuka in the studio. Many things happen, and I think we'll go straight into the conversation. And I will start with the legislators, for instance. They have slashed 50% of their basic salary. And when we calculate it, we realize that half of their basic salary, based on data available, is 300,000, because they're supposed to get basic salary of 600,000, but they have sacrificed half of it. And if you put 300,000 times 360 legislators, it will give you around 108 million. If you put it times 6, it will give 648 million for the whole 6 months. Is that a fair sacrifice from them?
Well, I think, first of all, we must benchmark things on the basis of what is the scale of the high cost of governance that Nigeria is facing, because that's the only way you can actually do a data-based analysis and not some tokenistic approach to discussing the issues of the high cost of governance. So many citizens will see these kinds of efforts as mere tokens, which do not fundamentally address the problem of Nigeria's high cost of governance at a time the country is not doing so well economically, at a time we have a huge debt overhang. So it's also a time that Nigerians are passing through a very excruciating period economically. So if you take steps which many citizens will perceive as not going far enough,
mere cosmetic,
yes, to address the problem, then it creates the perception that you're actually not ready to address the problem, hold the issue by the scruff of its neck, and ensure you deliver in terms of the promises to cut the cost of governance. In President Tinubu's Renewed Hope agenda, he talked about cutting cost of governance, but we have not seen the administration matching action with words or matching words with action. So all of these cosmetic approach that does not think through the scale of the problem would really not solve it. Yeah, maybe it may bring one or two applause from their own partisan supporters who would argue, but will this reset Nigeria's economy? Would this demonstrate that there's now prudence in the system and that resources are now being channeled to areas of topmost priorities? Those are the key issues. So I don't want to condemn or say, they have not done anything, but the fundamental question is, does it go far enough? And is it really a good starting point? I would think, it's not, because it does not address the scale of the problem we are facing.
All right, thank you very much, Armsfree. We have our Zoom guest in the person of Dr. Salaudeen Hashim. He is the Program Director, CLEEN Foundation, and he joined us from Owerri live. Mr. Salaudeen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, and good evening to Armsfree. Good to see you guys again.
Good evening, Salaudeen.
Yes, of course, before you join the program, we said we have a kind of a combo today. So many things have happened, and we set the ball rolling by, highlighting some of the issues. For instance, we said today, the House of Representatives said they are giving 50% of their salary, basic salary, as they are part of contribution towards ameliorating the sufferings of Nigeria. But the bone of contention is, they said, their basic salary. And when we calculated, we realized that their basic salary is around 600,000. So if you put everything together at the end of 6 months, what the 360 lawmakers in the House of Reps will donate to Nigerians is 648 million. It's roughly $500 million. And I asked Ajanuka in the studio whether this is actually a sacrifice enough that Nigerians will say, yes, we have representatives in the National Assembly. What is your take?
I think it would be good, first of all, to begin by saying that even if you are going to be dishonest, that you should not also be dishonest in charity. I think, again, the National Assembly coming with a baggage into the 10th regime suggested very clearly that they also have demonstrated additional dishonesty, if you like to say, by not going full throttle. One is the fact that it is actually very worrisome to suggest that you are giving 50% of your basic. The first question that readily comes to mind: why aren't you going to give 50% of your entire package every month? Then, of course, we would know that you are making indeed sacrifices, because the basic is actually a fraction of the entire money that you get on a monthly basis. But again, to give just 50% of basics is very insignificant. Two is the fact that it raises the question of government action, and first question is about the oxygen for survival. Is this a suggestion or a perception that there is no remedy in place for the ongoing situation that we're readily confronted with? Because, of course, it is very a matter of concern that when you begin to get to a point when people now find tokenism, let me use the word from Ajanuka in the studio, as a handout, giving handouts to citizens, then it raises a lot of question about is it the end of the road for reforms? Is it that they have run out of ideas as to the kind of developmental initiative that we need to see, or that there is nothing that is going to happen? And the final bit from this point is to ask, actually, how many bags of rice would that amount actually procure? Recently, just yesterday, we heard that the president had deployed 20 trucks each to each state across the federation. That is also part of the ongoing effort. The idea of handouts by every regime is actually when every policy effort has failed. And I'm beginning to get very concerned that if government has now resorted into handouts as part of measures to far palliative, then it tells very clearly that perhaps there is some level of concerns or dangers that we are not readily seeing, and that again they have made that focus, or again it is just some sort of mitigation for some calls about people coming to stand and revolt just for purposes of bad governance later on this month. So there is a lot of question as to why these handouts are coming in at this point. But again, it is not, like Ajanuka said, entirely throughout the intent behind it. But again, is to ask, how much does 50% of 600,000 then...
Yes, it's like we have an issue with his network. He will reconnect, certainly. But we did a vox pop from the Media Trust Group, our TV, radio, and newspaper reporters. They went out to ask Nigerians. Some reminded us that recently, former Speaker Yakubu Dogara, he said that, of course, his salary was 400,000 as Speaker of the House of Representatives, but his total allowances 25 million. So those who spoke said, even if it is maybe other members, because he's just one among equals, maybe there is a difference of 5 million or thereabout, meaning that each of the 360 might be going home with between 15 million to 20 million in terms of allowances. And they call on the legislators that if truly they want to touch the lives of distraught Nigerians, they should sacrifice their allowances and go home with the basic salary. Are you in tune with that suggestion?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the citizens who have, given that response, they are actually very spot on, because even if you look at their salaries is way, way above the minimum wage, which President Tinubu has just approved today.
Yes, which is our actually next area of
yes, and that is just coming to force. And even if you now compare it with the minimum wage that is about to be phased out, 30,000 naira, that was enforced.
Yeah, in April.
So if for instance they decide to take 30,000 out of their minimum, it shows the disparity, the gap, the massive gap between those who occupy our governance space, what they are taking from the system, and compared to what they are giving back to the system. So that mismatch is a major tragedy that has characterized our governance process. So I absolutely agree with those citizens. They could have, if they wanted to be really altruistic and patriotic, they could have said, okay, our humongous allowances, our fat allowances, we are letting them go. Letting them go. We are sticking only to the salaries, which we are taking, and we are making do with that in this time of. But beyond that is the bigger narrative around why do you amass, or why do they amass so much from the treasury, only to now come back and say, okay, we are giving you out of what we have immorally amassed. So there's
even though it is the revenue allocation, they get that through the law,
Yes, they get that through the law, but is every law moral? In the circumstance, of what Nigerians are going through.
All right, Salaudeen, welcome back once again. The question I ask Ajanuka here in the studio is the clamor by Nigerians that look, the legislators should go home with their basic salary and forego their humongous allowances, which run into billions of naira if you put it together. A citing example of what former Speaker Dogara said, that of course his basic salary 400,000, but he goes home with around 25 million in terms of allowances. But I want us to move, when you say little on this, to key in your conversation with the approval of 70,000 by the president as minimum wage for Nigerians. Is it a very positive news today?
All right. I think again is to say that giving your 50% of basics is actually another demonstration of an insincere way of identifying with citizens. The best way to deal with this would have been to say, look, for the next 1 year, we want to actually let go of allowances and use them for development. Yes, we know too well that this amount is actually charged from statutory allocations, but again, there should be some level of discourse as to how you want to actually manage it. The second thing is, where will this money go? Let us assume that what they have actually given is insignificant. Where would it go? How would it be pulled? And of course, what exactly would it be used for? And again, that is again one of the things that we need to ask. Secondly, is that this guy just took SUV that went into about 25 million naira each, I guess, and again for 360 persons, and I think the one for senators was about 30 million for 109 persons. So. Yes. Come again?
No. The SUVs you made reference to. Some are saying 140 million per each, or 160 million.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you take SUVs ranging from that very massive budget, then it tells you very clearly that there is a huge concern that we need to deal with. And Ajanuka was quite modest when he said that there are budgets or appropriations that are also illegitimate. In the name of appropriations, a lot of things go south. And that is, again, a tragedy of our national discourse, that we allow a lot of things to go into appropriation. And because the budget is the second most important document in the country after the Constitution, then anything that is budgeted and it is taken, then we term it as legitimate. And that again is something that comes to that really we need to query, and then again begin to interrogate our budget system. Again, President Buhari made an attempt, maybe for just 1 year, to do a zero-based budgeting system. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and again we went back to the traditional envelope, which therefore brings in a lot of leakages and corruption, and then of course open doors for massive floodgate for mismanagement. Then to what we heard today about 70,000, that again for me is another tragedy and a very big heartbreak that we came to that point. 70,000 naira cannot procure a bag of rice for a family, because again the current price of rice currently is about 85 to 90,000. So again, how much would a civil servant fuel his car if he earns 70,000. Then again, government is actually indirectly telling civil servants that they need to be very creative in the way they manage their cost of living, because again, if you are going to pay peanuts, two things will happen. One, it is either only monkeys will work for you, because when you pay peanuts, only monkey will work. Or two, you are only telling them that, look, find some kind of creative measures to survive. So that is again the second option, is where a lot of people will go into. And there's going to be massive corruption within the system. And perhaps, again, I'm not just being a prophet of doom, that we may be coming back before the end of the year for another round of environment or some level of budget, supplementary budgets. Just in January, when this budget was passed, I had actually raised concern that 6 months into the line, we were going to come up with supplementary budget. And that's because we were running against our own policies ourselves. You are floating the naira, and then again you are benchmarking, and then of course you are also removing subsidy, and that in itself were conflicting policies against what you have. So there are traditional budgeting system that is not aligning with the reform agenda. So I think the Ministry of Planning and Budgeting, now they are within the same ministry, they need to actually work together more harmoniously to respond to the conflict and the contrast between planning and budgeting, as a measure to ensure that people feel the impact of the entire process. But I think currently, as it were, 70,000 naira is a far cry. But again, the Labour has accepted, maybe because the government has actually told them that it to be progressive, that currently they are broke. There is no quite adequate revenue, which I think we need to find a way to understand. But that amount is actually very, very insignificant. I was privileged to, or maybe unfortunate, to go to the market lately to buy a paint rubber of tomato, and it costed 18,000. So how many paint rubber would a civil servant buy before the end of the month? So it tells you very clearly that it is still a far cry, and we need to do something different.
Okay, that was Dr. Hashim for you. What is your take on this? 70,000, is it a recipe for continued corruption? Because what we gathered is that many civil servants are cutting corners all this while, since the removal of the subsidy, even though corruption had been there. But it's like they took it to another level, that it's legitimate to cut corners in order to meet up with the home front.
Absolutely. Nothing from my point of view would justify corruption in the system, or to argue that, you know, anything enables anybody to go out there and be corrupt and all of that. But it's also a catch-22 situation in the sense that the people who we are even talking about that we earn, let's, you know, do the conjecture, that we earn 70,000. What is that percentage against the wider number of citizens, the wider population of citizens?
Over 230 million.
Exactly.
Okay. Are you trying to look at the ratio of if we are celebrating?
Yes. So I call it a misery wage. It's actually a misery wage. You know, from the 30,000 has always been a misery wage. 70,000 against the realities, and knowing that not the vast majority of our citizens will benefit from this. The woman in the informal sector who is struggling to do business in an environment where there's no light can't be talking about 70,000. They are just talking about survival from day to day. So we must make no mistake about the fact that this minimum wage is not even inclusive, you know, in the first place. It's not even taking care of the entire gamut of our population. So what's the population of federal civil servants? There are states that have come out to say they can't, even when the discussion was at 62,000, states came out to say, we can't pay this. Governors came out to say they can't pay it. So in the end, I'm not just going to argue about the insufficiency or inadequacy of the 70,000. I'm going to argue, you know, or discuss about it from the point of view of how many people are covered under this umbrella that we say it's not strong enough to cover people in terms of their social protection, because from that amount, you talk about feeding a family. Imagine, you know, a typical Nigerian family of 4, feeding them on 70,000, and Dr. Hashim has really given that very important imagery, comparing the minimum wage to a bag of rice, right?
Which is just one.
Exactly, or a paint rubber of tomatoes. So it's a total mismatch, you know, when you look at the realities. And to now think that nearly 80% of your citizens who are of working age, who want to be part of the economy, will not be covered by this so-called minimum wage. It tells you the extent of the tragedy. And this is where some of us argue that all of these handout approach to reflating the economy, to revamping the economy, really, some people may argue that it's a stopgap measure, but what do we actually need to expand the economy in a way that people can participate, people can actually become connected to the economic processes? Because what you have right now is a recipe for disaster. I'm not saying that, I don't want to say, Labour did not do their best, because they also, have operated under a very difficult environment.
I saw somewhere the president saying they will be giving 37 buses, 100-seater buses, going to Labour, meaning that on the average, Abuja will have 100-seater bus courtesy of Labour. Lagos, Sokoto, Akwa Ibom, they will all have one.
Yeah, but that was the same story we had about CNG buses.
Even these ones, they are going to be CNG buses.
Yes. So for us, I think Labour's position, which they anchored around a periodic review, seems more sensible. It seems more sustainable to say, okay, in another 3 years, the government is going to, not that they will get to that time now, then they start rigmaroling and start dancing up and down. If they have that firm commitment, and we have seen commitments from government in the past that they reneged on, if they have that firm commitment and then the thing is incrementally moved up, and then we are able to expand the economy in a way that people, Nigerians are not handout people. Right. Our people are not a handout people. Okay. Our people are very resilient. They want to work. They want to do business. They want to do things. But the government itself is constraining them. Look at the power sector, for example. Which business can survive under this band A, band B nonsense that is all over the place?
All right. So these are the issues. It appears Armsfree is a bit agitated that this salary increment is just for a portion of the wider society. But I remember a few weeks ago, the federal government said they will have some cash transfer to some categories of Nigerians. Don't you think they should start asking for timelines now instead of continued lamentation? Since the government keeps giving us offers, okay, we'll do A, B, C, D. Can we start thinking of timeline of delivering some of these services?
Yeah, I mean, that again is one of the issues that raises a lot of concern. Armsfree just mentioned prophetically that once it gets to 3 years, which is actually the window for that review, that there will be. I mean, Armsfree, you have seen several years under ASU where government had actually either sometime decided that, look, we didn't take this decision, and you know how it would take them. So there is going to be those a brick wall when that time comes. Unfortunately, we have a system that does not have integrity, and of course, over time, that trust between citizens and the state has actually been lost. So we need to do that confidence building as a measure to actually deal with the situation. Secondly, is the issue of the bus that you mentioned. You and I know too well that that bus will never come. Subsidy came with a promissory note that there were also going to be palliatives around provisionary of buses and all of that. We didn't see anything. So you see too well that it is actually a system that is actually built on a pack of cards that kept falling on a regular basis, and that is why citizens don't trust. So why would you again promise buses when you remove subsidy? You had promised that there were going to be buses to cushion the effect of transportation. That didn't happen. Transportation alone will sweep the entire 70,000 from the pocket of any civil servant. No food, no health care, no shelter, nothing. But again, these are the kind of things that we see. Thirdly is the issue that borders around mismanagement of resources. In the face of all of this, we still had the issue of intention to procure aircraft. We still had the issue of intention to procure a luxurious yacht. Then we have seen issues of building an exotic residence for the vice president. We have seen quite a lot of things. And yet, it is always a case of we are not meant or allowed to talk about it. We saw how this thing prevailed on the floor. The chief whip was actually raising concern about Nigerians, but yet it is actually a case of having to suddenly develop cataracts and rejig just for purpose of removing it. Now let us go to the question of the handouts you have actually talked about. There is no government anywhere in the world that achieves development through handouts. It is actually a palliative that happens 3 to 6 months. There is nowhere you make it a practice. We have handed out for years. One of the things that I would like the media and other civil society organizations to ask government, give us the register. Where is the register? There is the social protection policy says you should have a social register where you have a list of the vulnerable. Let us have the list. Let us benchmark this list against those people that are actually getting these particular monies. You will realize that there will be disparity. Where is the accountability in all of this? Where is the transparency in all of this? Where is some level of bureaucratic inefficiencies that have also been introduced into all of these things? Are there not party members at ward level, at macro level who are benefiting from this? Are there not people who are artificial, who are benefiting from all of these things? I think the social register should be made public for people to see, then we can engage and interrogate. Then people who want to put money to monitor and verify the integrity of that register can also do so. Then we can say of a truth, government is actually responding to these people. But unfortunately, I have asked at some point that this register should be made public, and that if they can give civil society access to it, and it will shock you the response that I got. And the response was simply put, that poor people don't want to be identified as poor people. Therefore, the social register is a confidential document. How can a poor man hide his identity from being poor? Poverty is actually not a plague. It is not a sickness. It is not endemic. But these are the things that we get. And we must shift from this bureaucratic way of doing things to a more transparent and accountable system so that people can actually buy in and help us to progress into a more sustainable pattern of development. But as it is now, we operate in an environment of opacity, of secrecy, of corruption, of mistrust and distrust and gaps, and this is actually affecting the relationship between the citizen and the state. How will this administration shift from this narrative? That is one area that I'm actually looking out for to see.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Salaudeen Hashim. This brings, he mentioned certain things about touching the lives of the vulnerable. Just, a few days ago, the judgment by the Supreme Court, which granted autonomy to local government areas. And today, the Senate also went a step further to now say they are planning to have electoral commission that will be conducting elections for the 774 local government areas. I think it's positive, right?
Yes. I think this is one area where we have seen some silver lining in terms of Nigeria's democratic development, and that whole push that those of us in civil society have always made that democracy must translate to development. And democracy cannot just be that, yes, we're able to elect a Senate that will guzzle our national resources, or elect a House of Reps that we take up all the resources that is meant for education, health, and the welfare of citizens. So we are beginning to see that very momentous decision of the Supreme Court, which came out of some strategy from the presidency, is one of the areas that the administration of...
But will it work? Nigeria is wanting to have a law, and it's another thing to put it to practice.
Yes, but for 25 years, and we're beginning to see movement. Like today, I was reading that in 13 states, they are already racing to conduct local government elections, because democracy as it is at the grassroots and at the nursery bed, that is when you do your leadership recruitment for the rest of the country. The local government should actually be places where we should have people who want to go onto the state and the federal level, learn the ropes as Democrats, learn how to lose elections, learn how to win elections legitimately, not buy votes, and do all of those things. So the fact that we have had for so long, 25 years of no democracy at the nursery bed, it also has contributed to the emasculation of democracy at also the state and the federal level. So in that sense, it's a positive development for...
But is it not really administrative red tape or bureaucratic duplication? We have INEC at the national level. Of course, those at the state level, they have not been delivered, because even the local governments election we are going to have in the 30 states you mentioned, most likely is 100% ruling party. Will the another electoral empire that will be saddled with conducting election make any difference? And are we not duplicating responsibility? Or signing a report on my mind?
Yes. So I rather have a situation in which, even though it's not the most acceptable situation, in which the ruling party goes goes to the polls to request the mandate of the people, and if the election is fair and transparent and the ruling party wins everything,
so be it.
So be it. Let the opposition now re-strategize. But we have even seen in some instances, like in Kaduna State some years ago, when they did, when El-Rufai introduced some measures
reforms,
and
yes,
some reforms, we saw the opposition winning some. So it is, for me, it's a good step. I've seen some of our friends in civil society criticize and say that, oh, the local governments are the responsibility of the states and all of that. But we have seen the states emasculate the local government. We have seen the states squeeze life out of the local government, and the local governments are not functioning. And some of the conflicts, we must make no mistake about some of these things. Even like some of the research we did at CDD, like our research on we titled "Multiple Nodes of Conflict," show that the collapse of authority at the local level contributed to some of the conflicts we are seeing. So when the administrators at local, because at the local level you have a security team, they are the ones that are supposed to even spot some early warning signs of violence or criminality and things like that. But if there is nothing, they don't have funds to do anything at that level, how then do you, and that is the level that is even closest to the citizen.
All right, let's bring Salaudeen into the conversation again. What is your take on having another separate independent empire that will be conducting election at the local government levels? Is it a very wonderful initiative, or INEC should be strengthened to take over this mandate?
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with Ajanuka. Security is local, elections are local, and if we must achieve development, we must localize our electionary process. And of course, we must hail the Supreme Court judgment, and I think, again, it is one very big win for the administration if it is genuinely going to be implemented. But unfortunately, again, just like we have raised some fear, the problem in this country country is not the federal level platforms and mechanisms. Governors at subnational level are emperors. Governors are not going to let go easily. And I already heard that they were planning to go to court to challenge it. And I wonder what court they want to go to challenge that judgment, because again, this is a Supreme Court ruling. And again, what they want to actually push for is that the Supreme Court should actually reverse itself, because again, the Constitution was clear, or is clear rather, considering the provision, and that there should be a corollary to that judgment. And the corollary to that judgment is that there should also be an amendment to the Constitution to also provide that, which I think would be the case. But most importantly, is that governors must actually remove their fangs from how local government are being operated upon. And one of the things that we're likely going to see, if the template will change for any reason, is that once the allocation lands, because the local government chairman knows too well that, well, he is there at the wings and caprices of the governor, that he will just call him and say, "Oga, this thing has landed," and the man will say, "Well, just send me my share." And then, of course, they know how to manage this. But the guy again is going to be the one to confront the EFCC when they come knocking. But what are the advantages? One is that citizens can therefore have quick access to some level of development. Two is that the kind of anomalies that we have seen at the state level, the question would be that would it go to change when it gets to the local government level? The third one is that citizens have been made to believe that there is an impossibility around democracy and development. That whatever you see is actually a farce, that there is nothing that is actually a fundamental in terms of practical action. But are we going to see a change in citizens' engagement by trying to work to the local government and holding them to account and say, look, we have the local government budget and these are the things you are meant to do. Are you going to do them? Why aren't we able to do it at the state level? When it gets to the local government level, will there be any change in the narratives and the manner within which this will be done? We will wait to see how all of this turns out. But most importantly now is that there is a proximity between citizens and development, considering that these monies are now coming very close. But my fear again is, how would the governors be very creative in subverting this judgment? That is my fear, and I'm waiting to see what happens afterwards.
Okay, that is the fear of Dr. Salaudeen. You attended the Second Africa Conference on countering information manipulation. I think there is a nexus between capacity to even confront somebody who you feel is encroaching into your rights. And do you think local governments, they have enough information, and even the people at the helms of affairs have the capacity to absorb such information, and they can be able to repel excessive influence by chief executives?
So I think this is a very interesting question. And it ties to some of the issues we discussed at the second West Africa conference. It was not just a conference for Nigeria, looking at information at the grassroots level, looking at integrity of information, ensuring that citizens get the right quality of information, especially in an age of disinformation. Computational propaganda is also a big issue where there are bad actors that want to misinform citizens, disinform them, and even use technology platforms for such issues. So to the question, of course, this is part of what, and I want my friend Salaudeen to also agree with me that sometimes hope can actually triumph over fear. And that comes also when we as civic actors are also able to give that encouragement to citizens that with the right information, if you arm yourself with the, with the correct information, you are not disinformed, you are not misinformed, you can actually hold your leaders accountable. There is now going to be a chairman in, maybe some 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers away from you who is going to be receiving allocations directly. what level of information are you going to be getting about what he's going to be doing with those funds? What role with civil society will organized labor, will human rights defenders play in galvanizing citizens to keep an eye on the processes through which those monies will be expended, whether it's the budgeting process of the local government, whether it's the expenditure processes of the local government, because we now need to have open governance. You know, I'm sure Salaudeen knows so much about the open government partnership. We now need to have open governance where citizens can now see that somebody far away in Abuja is not the only one responsible for your welfare. There is somebody also not too far away from where you live. He can be in the shape of a councillor, he can be in the shape of a local government chairman, he can also be in the shape of a departmental head within the local government. So the information question is really very, very critical. And just to make one final point, which is at that conference, which brought together information stakeholders from all of West Africa, we also discussed the role of technology, because technology is going to play a massive role in this. There's the AI, artificial intelligence, and the role it is playing in disinformation. But we realized something, that in countering disinformation, in giving people the real information and ensuring information integrity, the same technology that is being used to disinform people can also be a weapon to inform and energize people. And
local governments should embrace this, since they will have the resources.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will come back to you maybe for your final words, but let me have the final words of Dr. Salaudeen as we are rounding up the program. I want to have your take. If you look at it, both the legislature and the executive, they are racing against time, because there is an impending protest. We don't know those behind it, but some people are actually voicing out loud and clear. Is there a nexus between some of the decisions hurriedly taken by the executive and the legislature to assuage the anger of Nigerians? You should say this in less than 1 minute, please.
Oh, absolutely. There's a nexus between both, and government is actually trying to make sure that they establish that connection with the people, and of course show some body language, show some level of deliberate steps as part of measures just to be able to buy out a number of people. So again, these are some of the things that should have been done a lot earlier. So that is why we say be proactive, don't apply knee-jerk reactions, and when you bring the knee-jerk reactions, people will not trust the process. But again, yes, there are connections.
And what do you think going forward government must do, and what is your call to Nigerians who are planning? We don't know them. We are still struggling to see who are behind the August 1 to August 10 protest. What is your call to both parties?
My first call to citizens is to remain calm. That shouldn't be the alternative for now. We saw what happened in SARS. We already have infrastructure deficit. We don't want to go into another round of deficit, of inadequacy that will hinder growth. We saw how people hijacked the process. I know a particular fellow who lost his car lot, about 15, 20 cars that were burnt down just because for no fault of his, I had no business with what was going on. So people are going to lose livelihood. It is already very difficult. Let us not make it more difficult. We just saw what happened in Kenya. That was a terrible experience. We don't want to see that kind of resurgence again. Yes, issues are difficult, but constructive engagement is the best thing. Government on its own side must show sincerity, must show some level of deliberate approach in terms of the infrastructure for development, and must provide sincerity and openness in its conversation with citizens. Once this is done, you procure this confidence of citizens. I am sure that we are likely going to have a more jointly sustained administration that people can take ownership of.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Salaudeen Hashim, for joining us from Owerri. We hope to have you some other time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. 10 seconds you have. The protest.
Yeah, the protest, as a Democrat and as an activist, I don't want in any way to criminalize protest.
Okay.
Protest is part of the constructive engagement, but I call for order, I call for a non-violent expression.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be on the streets. You
can protest via apps.
You can even issue a press statement.
Right.
You can call a press conference.
Right.
Those are engagement. But we must not say we must not talk in a manner to show as if protest against bad governance,
right.
protest against hardship is a bad thing.
Thank you.
That cannot be a bad thing. It's the right of the citizen.
Thank you very much, viewers. We have come to the end of the program. In the studio is Armsfree Ajanuka. He is the lead fact-checking and countering disinformation consultant with the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. And from Owerri, Imo State, we had Dr. Salaudeen Hashim. He is the program director, CLEEN Foundation. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and thank you for being with us. Join us tomorrow when we will open the telephone line for you to also comment on some of these very important national issues. I'm Hamza Idris. From here, bye-bye. Meet us tomorrow.